Have you ever felt completely outmatched? Like you're facing a challenge that is just way too big to handle on your own. Well, today we're going to dig into a really powerful idea from the Liturgy for Saint Agnes that speaks right to that feeling. We're going to break down how to find real strength, especially when you feel powerless. This right here, this gets to the heart of it all. It's kind of backward, isn't it? The idea that victory doesn't actually go to the strongest person in the room. It speaks to those moments when our problems feel absolutely massive and we feel, well, small. So this is our main theme today, figuring out where true strength and real victory actually come from. So first up, facing your giants. We all have them. Overwhelming challenges, personal struggles, those fears that just sit in the back of your mind. And yeah, seeing them is the first step. But the real question is, what do you do about them? How do you fight back? And the answer, honestly, it's a total game changer. It requires this radical shift in how we see things. The battle is the Lord's. The core idea here is that the kind of strength that actually wins the day doesn't come from us. It comes from a power that is so much greater than we are. And the key that unlocks this whole thing is a word you've probably heard before, fidelity. But it's so much more than just belief. It's this deep, active trust. It's the common thread you're going to see in all the stories we're about to look at. It's about staying loyal, especially when it's tough, when you feel weak, and when the world is pushing you to just give up. I love this analogy because it makes it so clear. Think about it. A little kid's safety crossing a busy street doesn't come from their own strength, right? Of course not. It comes from their connection, their trust in the person holding their hands. That is exactly what fidelity looks like in real life. It's not about you becoming stronger than your problems. It's about holding on tight to the one who already is. Okay, so let's see how this actually plays out in Scripture. We're going to look at two really powerful examples of this idea of fidelity in action, one from the Old Testament and one from the New. First, the ultimate underdog story, right? David versus Goliath, but it's way more than that. David, just a young shepherd, is offered the king's own armor and sword, and he says no. Why? Because he knew this battle wasn't going to be won with swords and shields. His real strength was his trust. He walked out there to face a giant with just a sling and a few stones, declaring that the victory would come in the name of the Lord. Now let's look at Jesus. He's not fighting a physical giant, but he's up against something just as intimidating, legalism, rules without heart, what the gospel calls hardness of hearts. He's surrounded by people just waiting to accuse him, people trapped in their own rigid thinking. And what does he do? He chooses mercy. He chooses to heal. His weapon wasn't an argument, it was pure, life-giving power. So when you put them side by side, you see two very different battles. David's was fought with trust against a physical enemy. Jesus's was fought with mercy against a spiritual one. But you see the common thread. Neither one of them relied on their own strength. They both tapped into a divine source of power. The battles look different, sure, but the source of victory is exactly the same. Okay, we've seen it in Scripture, but how does this play out in a real person's life? For that, let's look at Saint Agnes, who gives us this just stunning, real-world example of this truth in action. 13. That was her age, the age of Saint Agnes, when she decided to stand up to the entire Roman Empire. Just let that sink in for a second. All the power, all the might of Rome against a 13-year-old girl. Agnes chose fidelity over safety, over getting married, over her own life. She had no worldly power, no influence, nothing. Her strength was her total and complete trust in God. Her story is the ultimate proof of this theme, that God's power is actually made perfect in our weakness. She didn't just hear these lessons, she literally lived the readings, showing us what it means to trust God when you are at your absolute most vulnerable. So, we've seen this principle in Scripture and in the life of a saint. That's great, but what about us? How do we take this incredible lesson and apply it to our own lives, like today? Here's a really practical 3-step challenge. First, identify. Choose one specific, concrete act of mercy you can do today. Second, commit. Maybe pick something that pushes you a little bit, something that might cost you some comfort or approval. And third, and this is the most important part, trust. Do it not in your own strength, but with the quiet trust that you are allowing God to work through you. And that's really the final thought to leave you with. The focus shifts, you see? It isn't about what victory you are going to win. By choosing to act out of trust instead of your own strength, you're inviting God to win the battle through you. So what giant will you face with fidelity today? And what victory will the Lord claim in your life because of it?